I'm going to take you on a journey of me burning some of my past journals. This was something that I posted about on Instagram and a little bit on YouTube when I was going through the experience of doing this this year. And a lot of you had a lot of questions and were very curious about my process, my mindset behind it, different concerns I might have had while doing it. So here we are. I'm going to spill all the tea. I'm going to try to answer all of your questions in an entertaining way as I tell the story of my experience. And I hope that this inspires you to maybe let go of some things that you're holding on to that are no longer serving you. Rewind to the summer of 2022. I'd been thinking about doing this process for, at least a year, maybe multiple years, probably multiple years. And as I was putting away some of my journals that I had recently finished, I realized that I was going to need another bin. And it kind of made me pause, and I was like, I'm keeping a lot of journals. For what purpose? Now, everybody's why is going to be different. I journal mainly for two reasons: for the act of it, for the actual process and the joy and things that I derive from that, and also to relive happy memories. But the joy of doing the journals is usually takes priority over that. And when I'm talking about journals, I'm talking about anything that I have written inside of a book. So notes, personal ramblings, creative journaling, photo journaling, bullet journaling, planners, all these different things. These all lived in these bins. And one sunny summer day, I decided that I was going to go through every single journal in those bins and figure out if they were ones that I wanted to keep or not. And I've been journaling since I was a little kid. It had been spotty over my teen years, but I still had at least 10, from my young adult life, and then, a bunch in the past 8 years or so when I really started picking up journaling. And what I found was, when I was looking through them, that there were lots of different emotions and things that came up when looking at each journal, and not just from actually looking inside the contents, but all I had to do was see the cover, and I could immediately remember things that were happening in my life during that time. And while some of them were very, happy memories, a lot of the journals were not so happy. So I went through each one. I thought about, is this something that I would like to look back at? And if I were to look back at it myself, would it bring about positive feelings? And if I wasn't sure, I opened the journal and read some of the entries, and some of them, I was like, oh yeah, I remember that happened. That was fun, but it wasn't really integral to my development as a human. So I didn't see any value in keeping that. Or there were ones that I read and I was like, I never want to read that again in my life. And I would be absolutely 100,000% mortified if I died and somebody read that and added that to their opinions about, me and my life and how I am, because it's just not who I am anymore. So those were definitely on the top of the list to burn. And then there were other ones that just didn't really have a lot of value because I was done using them. For instance, a lot of my old bullet journals when I was first starting out, I didn't have much to say in them. I mean, I might have swatched, some paints here and there that I got that were new, and there might have been a few pictures here and there. But for the most part, it was literally just a book of to-do lists of tasks that literally have no relevance of me ever revisiting. So I chose to also let those go so that I could make space for the things that mattered, for the journals that mattered, for the ones that I would enjoy looking at. Basically, my criteria for what I kept versus what I, got rid of was, if I'm keeping it, does it make me happy? Would I be okay if somebody else saw it, and is it something that I want to revisit? And if I answered no to any of those questions, then I went ahead and I put it in the burn pile. And that's really all I had to ask myself. And while I was going through it, there were a couple that I was kind of on the fence about, and I did decide to keep those for now, but who knows, maybe in the future I'll let them go. A couple of the hardest ones were creative journals that I had when I started my YouTube channel, because I loved some of the spreads in there. I loved the creative ideas. I remember having so much fun putting them together, but I don't actually want to look back on them very often because they're full of, relationships and other things that are really not part of my life anymore and don't bring me joy to revisit. So those were kind of mixed feelings, and I'm keeping those for now. We'll see what I decide to do with that in the future. But that was all I did. The process took me about 3 hours, and I think I got a pretty bad sunburn. But it was a really fun and liberating experience to have this idea. And then what I did was I actually waited. I was a little worried that if I did the burning on that same day that I would regret some of them. So I put them all in a Tupperware container, like a 2 burn bin. And I left them in my storage box for pretty much an entire season. They lived in there for the rest of the summer, and when fall came one day, I just felt like, today's the day and I'm gonna do this. So when I decided to burn my journals, I really wanted to make a ritual out of it, because all of these journals or books or whatever, planners, etc., had been, my friends for whatever amount of time that I had used them for. And, I'd pulled out a couple pages of things that I wanted to keep, but for the rest of it, I didn't need it anymore, but I still wanted to take time to honor it in a way to release all of the emotional attachments to old experiences and old relationships that were held between the pages. I really do believe that once you put things into a journal, it takes on a life of its own, and it's really a culmination of the energies and the different things that you put into it, and you don't even have to read any of the words to kind of feel that and get that essence, which means it's essentially trapped there, which can be, good or bad depending on what the vibe of that energy is. So when I burned them, I really wanted to see it as releasing all of these things that were in there, like I said, all the emotions and the experiences and the trauma and even the happy memories, that really weren't something that I wanted to reminisce on anymore. They helped me in my evolution of, who I'm becoming, and they were great at the time, but they don't really matter to me so much at this point. And I don't need, I don't need the journal to be able to reflect on those things. If it's meaningful enough, I'll remember it. And if I don't remember it, then it really doesn't matter. So like I said, I wanted to make a ritual out of it. So I spent time the morning before burning my journals, just kind of sitting with the idea of it. I wrote a letter of intention, I guess you could call it, a spell, and really just thanking the journals for all they had done for me, for our relationship together, calling on the elements and the earth to help me release these energies and transmute them, and really just setting my intention for the ritual, and again, expressing my gratitude for everything that the journals did for me, and for the gratitude of the lessons that I learned and the experiences that were contained within the pages. And I really wanted it to be clear in my intention that I wasn't burning the journals because they were bad. I wasn't burning them to extinguish their existence. I was just ready to let go of those things because they weren't serving my highest and greatest good anymore. And that didn't mean that they didn't before. It just meant that they didn't right now, and that was fine. And I think it's almost a service to them to let their job be done and to release everything, back into the earth, to turn everything to ash, to start anew. It's really something that I think nature teaches us, is that there's a time and a season for everything, and when it's time is done, it's done. The leaves fall every year and they decay, and then that feeds the tree for something new. So I really wanted to capture that experience within my ritual. So after writing my intention, I really chose some of my spell element pieces off of that. Now, when I do spells, they're very intentional, so I'm not giving you a prescriptive recipe because I don't think that is necessary. I used what I had on hand and chose things based on the intention I had in mind. So put in some salt to symbolize kind of the clearing and cleansing aspect. It's one thing I really like to do. There was a lot of sage that I put in there. There was pine cones. I collected various pine cones off the property to go ahead and burn with. That is really a thank you to the earth and to bring that element in there, because that was really important in my process. I put in lots of various rose petals and things to symbolize, my love for the journals, my gratefulness, as well as the loving energy of releasing those things. And I also added some larger rose petals to symbolize my relationship with Chris. I believe I did this shortly after we got married, so that those rose petals were from our honeymoon, and I really wanted to bring in that fresh new energy, especially since I was burning a lot of journals that had to do with old relationships. And then I believe I also had some basil on there, some dried basil from a plant that I had grown, and I don't remember my specific intention for that now, but I'm sure there was one because I was intentional of everything in there. I also added a couple essential oils into the salt. That's something that I like to do sometimes, and to soak up any extra elements of things that I didn't have specific tools for. Lemon is one I'll use a lot, especially in terms of clearing and things. So I hope that gives you a little insight into that. And then of course we had a little bit of libations to seal it, to honor it, to celebrate, and adding alcohol into rituals is always fun. And yeah, we just kind of hung out. I lit some candles. I had my intention in as I was putting in each of my ingredients and adding the journals and the photographs and things that I had in there, and we stood with it and enjoyed the outside, and really sat there until it all burned, which took way longer than I thought it was gonna. Let's be honest. So I hope that kind of gives you an insight into my process and answers all your questions. One more thing that I did get asked that didn't quite fit into the story per se is someone was curious whether I was concerned about the toxic, fumes and things that would be released from me burning the photographs and glue and things like that. And to be honest, I didn't really think about it while I was doing it. But I suppose my answer to the question would be, this definitely isn't something that I would recommend doing in an indoor fireplace. This was definitely something that I did outside. Always be safe and whatnot. I don't want to talk too much about, the environmental factors because I'm not schooled in all of that, and I don't know all the necessary things that have to do with making an informed decision about that. So definitely, use your own judgment with that. But to me, the benefit greatly outweighed any type of risk. Journals weren't something that I could recycle because of all the glue and photographs inside of it, so they would have had to been thrown away. I wasn't really concerned about it, again, because I was outside, and I felt that the impact wasn't going to be greater than any other means of disposing of them, now or in the future. So I hope that answers all of your questions. I'm happy to answer any additional questions that arose during this video in the comments, so go ahead and leave those if you have them. I was very delighted to see so many of you talking about your experience with burning your own journals in the past. Everybody had really positive things to say. So I was happy to see that some of you had already kind of taken that initiative for yourself and did that. It's such a beautiful experience. And if it is something you're thinking about, I hope that these questions helped and sharing my experience helped. Again, I can't really give you a prescriptive way to do this because it is going to be specific to each individual. But yeah, just kind of think about your why. Why is it you journal? How would you feel in the future if people found, the ones that you have? And more importantly, do you even want to look back on these things? And what is it time to let go of and to do it from a space of gratitude and appreciation rather than a place of wanting to get rid of because it's, bad or etc., etc. So I'm going to leave you here with that. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today, and I will see you guys in my next video. Take care, guys. Bye.